Vagrancy was endemic in Victorian Britain, and hundreds slept out of doors every night, and for many it was no fault of their own. Lack of state support for the unemployed and the high cost of rent due to unscrupulous landlords fueled poverty and homelessness. These were among many social ills in the 19th century that caused people to find themselves on the street and forced into a life wandering poor. Most begged for bread and board, but some fell into bad company and crime, learning all manner of cunning tricks to part the unwary and the gullible from their money or goods. And they could make a good living at it too. In fact, some of the schemes you will discover today are, of course, dishonest, but surprisingly ingenious. This account comes from the early Victorian era and is told by a gentleman who compiled his stories with the help of genuine information and anecdotes from workhouses, police constables, and vagrants themselves. It might leave you questioning whether the honest labourer, whose story of meeting a professional beggar you will hear, was right to choose a life toiling in the fields, only to earn enough to eat bread and cheese. When the beggar dined on so much meat, he could afford to give it away. Before we move on, if you're interested in history like this, and you want to find out more about what life was really like for people in the past, please consider subscribing for more content. If you'd like to support what we make for you, check out the description for links to ways you can help us to continue bringing the past alive. The report made by the Poor Law Commissioners in the year 1839 is most instructive on the subject of vagrancy and mendicity in the country. The most prominent body of delinquents in the rural districts are vagrants, and these vagrants appear to consist of two classes. First, the habitual depredators, looters and vandals, housebreakers, horse stealers, and common thieves. Secondly, of vagrants, properly so called, who seek alms as mendicants. In the borough of Chesterfield, there are many vagrants. The number cannot be stated. Their habits are to prowl about the borough and immediate adjacent villages, under pretext of begging or seeking work, but whose real objects are to look at the premises where they call, to see what booty can be gained by plunder at night. The evidence regarding the habits of vagrants in other towns, such as Lincoln, Ludlow, Chesterfield, Devizes, and Maidstone, is of a similar character. I give extracts from the confessions of depredators of the migratory class and one mendicant. A thief, aged 21, in Salford jail, says, For the last 4 years, up to 1839, I have travelled for a maintenance. I carried a covered hawker's basket with an oil case on the top, with cutlery, trinkets, braces, Birmingham fancy goods, buttons, pearl, bone, and wood. It was the excuse for travelling. There are cant words for everything you use or do. I have seen some old cant in print, but it is nothing to the cant now used. There are 3 sorts of cant: the gypsies, the beggars, such as pretended sailors and others, and the thieves. The cants are distinct in many words, but are like in others. A stranger to the cant words could not understand the gypsies or others, save a few words here and there. The gypsies have a cant word for every word they speak. The vagrant cant is a lower style than the thieves. They use it to tell one another what they get at different houses. They are not always thieves. They will not push themselves forward to steal, and one half of them, if they saw another stealing, would tell of him. And yet, if they could do it themselves, they would. The Manchester and Liverpool thieves are reckoned the most expert. They are thought to be of Irish parents, to have most cunning. In fact, I'd be bound to say that 3 parts of those who are travelling now throughout the kingdom have Irish blood in them, either from father, mother, or grandmother. I stayed till about February, when I started by Stockport, Macclesfield, and begged me way up to London, about 7 days on the road. I went to Covent Garden Market. I lived for 6 weeks by stealing fruit and selling it. Next came the confessions of a young thief.
At every lodging-house on the road a man I knew met plenty of trampers, and he did not see one face he had not seen at St. Giles,
a notorious London slum.
They also organised him and compared notes. Some were hawkers, some were going half naked, some were ballad singers, some were going about with false letters, others as broken-down tradesmen. Some as old soldiers and some as shipwrecked sailors, and every night they told each other of good houses. They all lived well, never eat any broken victuals, but had meat breakfasts, good dinners, hot suppers, and frequently ended by going to bed very drunk. Not one spent less than 3 shillings a day, many a great deal more. They sometimes make 5 shillings, and average 3 shillings, 6pence per day. Some often get a sovereign, where humane people reside.
A boy of 14, a prisoner in Knutsford jail, then states,
"Sometimes I have been sent begging to different houses. The people have been watched upstairs to make their beds. I then gently opened the door, pulled the key out of the lock, and pressed it against a piece of tampered clay which I had in my hand. We could then cut a key and go in when we liked."
The next classes of depredators who perambulate the country are the vagrants, properly called so. Upwards of 18,000 commitments per annum of persons for the offence of vagrancy mark the extent of the body from which they are taken. It will be seen that vagrancy, or the habit of wandering abroad under colour either of distress or of some ostensible though illegal occupation, having claims on the sympathies of the uninformed, constitutes one great source of delinquency, and especially of juvenile delinquency. The vagrant classes pervade every part of the country, rendering property insecure, propagating pernicious habits, and afflicting the minds of the sensitive with false pictures of suffering, and levying upon them an offensive impost for the relief of that destitution, for which a heavy tax is legally levied in the shape of poor rates. The following confession is taken from an experienced travelling vagrant, and furnishes a more particular account of their habits than is contained, or could be expected, in a return to official queries. Beggars tramp about from town to town. There is a low lodging house for travellers in every village. They tell the people that they are travelling to work, but pray to God they may never get it. They all go about to walk in the mornings and return at night to their lodging houses, where they live well, and spend the day's produce in drinking. They are merry fellows, money or no drink, and laugh at the people for flats. They tell each other what houses are good, and arrange their districts so as not to interfere with each other. Every tramper is accompanied by his fancy girl, or his wife. A black fellow, who is well known about Deptford and goes about the streets singing and dancing, takes his country journeys with 2 women, and makes plenty of money to pay all their expenses. The women who travel about with the trampers seldom go out begging. They sometimes disguise themselves as gypsies, and go fortune-telling. It is very profitable. They watch for the master and mistress to leave the house, and then try to get hold of the servants. They beg money, food, clothes, or anything, and if a silver spoon is in their way, they will not tumble over it. They will steal it. The price of their bed is 3pence, always 2 in a bed, sometimes 10 or 15 in a room. Yokels, countrymen, were seldom or never seen in the lodging-houses, but he has seen many during the last 2 months. Does not know why. They manage very badly, cannot get enough to find themselves in food. The regular trampers give them scraps to eat if they have been unlucky in the day. They all have their appropriate cant names. The vagrant describes these classes as follows. First, men who go about the country almost naked, begging clothes or food. They get about 3 shillings a day. They have good clothes at their lodging-house, and travel in them from town to town. If there are not many houses in the way, before they enter the town, they take them off, as well as their shoes and stockings, put on their Guernsey jackets, send the bundle and the women forward to the lodging-house, and commence begging at the first house they come to. There was a man who was recently clad from head to foot in new clothes at a shop in Billericay, by the son of a rector in a neighbouring village, all of which clothes, including hat, shoes, and stockings, he sold about half an hour afterwards, by auction, in the tap-room of a low public house, to his companions, and they all got drunk together with the proceeds. These fellows always sell a gift of clothes. Second, men who are ring-droppers. Travelling tinkers make sham gold rings out of old brass buttons. There is a noted fellow at this work. His wife and mother go with him and drop the rings. They live in St. Giles's and travel for a month or 2. They sometimes make 20 or 20 shillings a day. Third, fellows who go around to different houses, stating their master's stock of rags has been burnt, or that a sudden supply is wanted, and that they are sent forward to collect them. The rags are called for, and one fellow marches off with the bundle, leaving one or more talking with the housewife, who is gravely cavilling, criticising objections, about the price, and has gravely informed that the master is coming round, and they leave some private mark on the doorpost, which they say is the sign to indicate to him the quantity and quality taken, and the amount to pay. So they walk off and never tip her anything. The rags are carried to the keeper of a rag shop, who gives quires of paper, 24 sheets, in exchange, which they carry round to small villages, and sell to small shopkeepers, or at farmhouses. All rag shops stand fence for anything, receive stolen goods of any kind, and buy any stolen property. Fourth, a set of fellows who go about in decent apparel, leaving small printed handbills at cottages and farmhouses, wherein are set forth the wonderful cures of all sorts of ailments affected by medicine, which they sell. The following day these bills are called for, and the credulous people buy small vials of this nostrum, at various prices from 10 shillings to 6pence, according to the tact of the beggar, and the folly of the party. The mixture is only a decoction of any herb or rubbish that may be at hand. A beggar was told by one of this class that he had just sold a bottle of stuff to a poor woman who lived in a cottage on Warley Common, Essex, and who had been long ailing. She gave 10 shillings for it, and it was only salt and water, some tea, and coloured green with nettle tops. These fellows obtain more money than any other class of impostors, sometimes as much as £2 a week, and they seldom go to London. Fifth, men who travel about the country in shabby genteel attire, stating that they have been well off formerly, but are reduced by recent misfortune. Some are burnt-out farmers or shopkeepers, some first-class workmen out of work, owing to the bankruptcy of their employers, some captains who have just lost their ships upon the coast, and this story is always used after a heavy gale of wind. Some carry begging letters which are written for them, price 1 shilling. This is very profitable, if well managed. The Lady Bountifuls are great supporters of these fellows, a woman who engages in ostentatious acts of charity to impress others. Sixth, fortune-tellers. Many women, when tramping with the men, dress themselves like gypsies, and contrive to get a tolerable daily booty, at least 3 shillings or 4 shillings a day. Seventh, trampers, who have nothing to sell, but manage to live merely by begging. Eighth, thieves. Prigs generally go in couples, walk into a country shop where there is an old woman and a candle, buy something, drop a 6pence, get the old lady to bring the candle round to look for it, while the other fellow is filling his pockets with whatever he can lay his hands on. Ninth, match sellers. Until lucifers became cheap and in general use, the matches sold by the street folks, and there were numbers in the trade, were usually prepared by themselves. The brimstone match sellers were of all ages, but principally, I am told, old people. Many of them wore tattered regimentals, or some remains of military paraphernalia, and had been, or assumed to have been, soldiers, but not entitled to a pension. 10th, ballad singers. 11th, fellows who boil up fat and a little soap overnight, run it out in a cloth, and next morning cut it up like cakes of Windsor soap. It's all bad, but they drive a good trade. 12th, fellows who go from house to house stating that they live in some neighbouring town, and ask for umbrellas to mend. An active fellow in this line will make a clean sweep of all umbrellas in a village before dinner. These umbrellas are produced in the London market on wet days and dusky evenings. The commissioners then go on to say, instances have been stated to us where travelling mechanics have been seduced from their occupations into the career of mendicancy from the temptation which it offers, labourers have gone to the vagrants' lodging-houses to purchase, for their own use, the meat and refuse food which they could obtain there at a cheap rate. The contrast of the advantages enjoyed by the dishonest under comparative impunity against the industrious is depicted by a witness who relates an instance which came to his knowledge, where an agricultural labourer, sitting by the roadside eating dry bread with a little cheese, was observed by a vagrant, who asked him if he had no meat to eat with his bread. Being answered in the negative, the beggar pitied him, and offered to him some of the meat which he had obtained by begging at the doors of the surrounding houses of the gentry, from which doors the labourer said that he or his children, who were well known to be industrious, would have been spurned if they attempted to beg. At Llanfwrland there are 3 lodging-houses for tramps. The most notorious is kept by a woman known by the name of Old Peggy. One man told a druggist in the town that for 2pence Old Peggy would give him scraps enough to keep his dog for a week or more. The druggist stated that Old Peggy has often come to him saying, "God bless you, doctor, sell me a ha'porth of tar." When first applied to, he asked, "What do you want with tar?" The reply was, "Why, to make a land sailor. I want a ha'porth just to daub a chap's canvas trousers with, and that's how I makes a land sailor, doctor." In Fifeshire, Scotland, a preventative police base has been established with almost the sole object of looking after vagrants. It appears to have worked well and to have been productive of great advantages, having investigated the general causes of depredation of vagrancy and mendicancy, as developed by examinations of the previous lives of criminals or vagrants in the jails. We find that in scarcely any cases is it ascribable to the pressure of unavoidable want or destitution, and that in the great mass of cases it arises from the temptation of obtaining property with a less degree of labour than by regular industry.